Hi, I'm Joel Wanasek. I'm a pro mixer and the co-founder of NailTheMix.com, the coolest place to learn how to mix music on the internet. Rick Rubin shut down the internet last week with his comments on his 60-minute interview. Wow, it's been a total debate. The music community's been in an uproar. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to react to this and dissect it. We're going to talk about Rick Rubin as a producer.
Do you play instruments?
Barely.
Do you know how to work a soundboard?
No. I have no technical ability, and I know nothing about music.
You must know something.
Well, I know what I like and what I don't like, and I'm decisive about what I like and what I don't like.
I love this. I can see why this got taken out of context and people have gone crazy over it. There's a lot to dissect here, so let's keep going.
So what are you being paid for?
The confidence that I have in my taste and my ability to express what I feel.
Wow. Bravo. Okay. So I could see why a statement like that is controversial. The problem with a lot of media, and unless you've studied psychology like I have in marketing and things like that, you may or may not be privy to this, but the way that you ask a question can frame somebody into a box or a position to make them look a certain way. So I really hate a question like, so what are you paid for? Almost like you don't actually do anything. And it's like, no. This guy doesn't understand. You know, of course he's a reporter, Anderson Cooper. Of course he doesn't know anything about music or what a music producer does. But nevertheless, the fact that so many people are sitting there like questioning Rick Rubin, who is just like an absolute icon and just like, in my opinion, one of the greatest producers of all time, and his track record speaks for itself. So let's talk about something. And I think I'm going to go to a quote here. Legendary metal producer Joey Sturgis had something I think that's perfect for this. He says, the fact that so many people have reacted negatively and ignorantly to the new Rick Rubin 60 Minutes interview piece proves that many people just don't understand what a music producer is or does. And that's a really good point. So what does a producer actually do? Let's talk about this, okay? Because this will bring some clarity here to the issue. So the music producer is like one of those terms that over the years has just kind of changed. But traditionally, okay, let's go back in time. Traditionally, the music producer's job, right? I mean, I should say their ultimate goal is to just make the best record an artist has ever made. Just like a film producer, right? You're trying to make the best movie. A traditional producer would go in and, they would work with the label. They would establish the budget. They would hire the team. Like, I want this person to engineer. I want this mastering engineer, etc. They would pick out the team. They would work with the artist to get the songs. They would work on finding the greatness within the artist. You know, maybe they're in a down spot of their career and they need to be inspired. Maybe they're, really at the top of their game and they need somebody who could take them even to the next level, right? You know, a great producer does all these things. You know, they're managing the recording production. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean they necessarily need to have technical ability like Rick Rubin says he doesn't have. Like, it doesn't matter if he can push a button or not, because a producer doesn't need to push a button. That's what an engineer's job is. Now, traditionally, that's what a producer has done. They've worked with the artist, the label. You know, they're kind of like the person in charge of the whole production, hence the term producer. Now, as home recording has come in, and especially hip hop, what's happened is this term has kind of been bastardized. Like, people think a producer is a beat maker now, right? In non-hip hop, we would call that like a songwriter, right? You know, somebody who writes songs. And as the home recording revolution has happened, what's come in is the fact that people have essentially taken the term producer and just kind of lumped it into like, well, I record, I mix, I master, I produce, I write with the, bands just come in and they pay me in my studio and I do everything, right? There's so many of us that have gone through that, where you wear all hats and then you become the de facto producer, especially when you're dealing with label bands that don't have a budget. So naturally the term has kind of been like convoluted. It doesn't mean what it used to be, but that's technically what it's supposed to mean. You know what I mean? Somebody who makes beats isn't necessarily a producer. I mean, or writes songs. I call them songwriters, but they get called producers. Like, well, the producer on this track, like, okay, the co-writer, you know what I mean? So that term gets thrown around a lot and it gets misused. So we need to be very, very clear about what a producer does, where it's come from. So now that you understand that, let's talk about a couple of specific things in regards to this interview. And I'm going to quote another really, really successful producer here, Colin Britton, somebody who's just been smashing the charts in the last couple of years in rock and pop punk and stuff like that. And Colin's got a great take on this that talks, and this explains why Rick Rubin is just such a genius. So of all the artists I work with, know that when I talk about this a lot, Rick Rubin is my favorite producer for a myriad of reasons, not to least to say that he's a purist of taste and emotion through music, which has very little to do with technical abilities of any kind, right? So what I just talked about, technical ability, understanding music theory, none of this crap matters as a producer. Psychology, that's important. Knowing how to manage a session, how to manage a budget, that's important. Knowing how to find the greatest moment possible out of an artist, how to inspire somebody to create their best art possible. That is what makes a great producer, not the ability to click a mouse or to move a fader here, you know what I mean? Or to twist a knob, right? That's not necessarily what a producer needs to know how to do. This is why he has helped artists make, non-arguably, some of the most influential and as a byproduct of this, the most commercially successful albums and songs ever, okay? So being present and hearing your inner voice is a critical part of transcending mediocrity in your craft. And I hope we can take a tip from Rick Rubin here and to live and create with a little bit more consciousness. So let's talk about that. Okay, so aside from like the technical aspect of what a producer is, let's talk about, what makes a great producer. And as a mixer, okay, so let me give you from my point of view. Basically, there's several people in the production chain, if you're not too familiar with this stuff. There's the person that records the band, right? The engineer. There's the editor who may edit and clean up performances and like remove somebody, the drummer squeaked in their chair before they started playing, get that out of there, right? We don't want to listen to a chair squeak in the middle of a, break of a song, right? Or something like that. That's the editor. And then, there's like assistants and things like that assist. I've already explained what the producer does. So once the album is recorded, it goes to a mixer, right? And the mixer takes those spaceship looking things, like call it a recording console. They turn all the knobs and they try to make a mix of the song that has the most emotional translation of impact that's going to sound great on all systems, right? Finding the right balance of instruments, right? So that's what a mixer does. And then it goes to a mastering engineer. And the mastering engineer is the person that kind of puts the sauce on it. So a record might have 12 mixers on it. Every song has a different mixer. Or maybe 2 people mix the record, or maybe just 1, and all the songs are different, whatever. The point is the mastering engineer's job is to take the record and to just make sure everything is evened out across the record. It sounds the best it can across commercial playback systems. And the mastering engineer has sequenced out the record and encoded the metadata. So, when it's on the radio, it gets pinged and the right code is in there that goes to say, hey, you are the person that wrote this song, the artist, a royalty. Now you got to pay, right? So the mastering engineer kind of does all that encoding stuff and then it gets delivered. Okay, so there's a lot of people involved in record production. The producer manages that stuff. So a great producer is somebody that knows how to bring the best out of their artists, okay? And I would say a producer is a psychologist. That's like really what they're doing. A manager and a psychologist, right? So if you think about that for a second, it's really, really tough being a rock star. And if you're not in the music industry and you don't deal with people like this on that level every day, you don't understand. You don't know what it's like to have that amount of fame, that amount of a microscope on every single part of your life. The psychological impact of having to deal with that amount of attention, positive and negative. You can't go out in public, etc. Like anything you say, tabloids. Anything you do, tabloids. You know what I mean? It's a really heavy burden. It's not conducive for an artist's greatest creativity. You know what I mean? It's not like locking up in a mountain cabin, sitting there, making music by yourself and just relaxing and, staring at the mountains for 3 months and being in a great headspace. It's like, man, we just got off a tour. We did 300 dates straight. I'm exhausted physically, from eating food, bad food, hotels, sleeping in a bus. I'm tired, jumping on stage every night. My energy's gone. I feel uncreative because I'm arguing with the bass player in the band and we're having our last record was a success. And now we have to beat that. There's so many pressures that these artists have to go through. And a great producer needs to go and cut through all that bullshit. And a great producer needs to sit down with the artist and work with that artist to pull out the magic, to find those moments. And that's what somebody like Rick Rubin does. He doesn't sit in the room and get on the board and be like, all right, let's get the snare a little brighter. Let's make these guitars like this. No. That's not so important. That's the engineer's job. Rick Rubin sits in the room and he listens. He talks to the artist. He gets inside their soul and he listens, figures out what their message is, where they are, what part of them is going to create a great song. I'm going to give you an example. Howard Benson, one of the greatest charting producers of all time in rock, same kind of thing. I used to mix a lot for some guys on Howard's team. And my buddy over there, the producer, he would sit down with artists in the courtyard and they would just talk for 3 days. Literally just sit down and talk. And then out of those discussions, they would just try to find some story or some moment, right, that has inspiration that the artist can then go and then all of a sudden, boom, like, let's go write a song about that. Like, oh my God, that story is amazing. You know, so like somebody like Rick is just sitting there in the studio and he's just listening to the music and he's looking for that moment of greatness and glory that maybe nobody else has seen. That can be that song that just resonates and impacts and translates. And that in itself is where the genius lies, because you're in tune when you're a producer, right, with these subtleties, right? You just listen to, I'll give an example, like a band comes in and they bring in, say, 20 tracks, right? All the time when I was producing bands, it would come in and they would be like, all right, 20 songs, we need to do 3. And I just listen. And they would play and play. And all of a sudden I'd be like, whoa, what's that right there? I'd be like, this song, that riff, let's do something with that. And all of a sudden they're like, well, you know, I've got this hook I've been working on. I've got this like tagline. Like, what do you think about this? And I'm like, oh my God, that's the chorus. And like grab the guitar. Now suddenly like the creative spark comes on. And then the artist is like inspired, you're inspired. And like you do this back and forth and you just bang out this amazing track and you're done in like 6 to 8 hours. And you're both sitting there and you're just like, what just happened? Where did that come from? You know, it came from literally sorting through a bunch of things, finding that gem, and just recognizing its greatness and being like this. And then all of a sudden it wakes up the artist's brain and they're like, yeah, you're right. I've always had a feeling about this part. I just never knew how to package it because you didn't put it with this and this and this. And let's bring this together. Now we have something really cool. That is what a great producer does. Now, something that I think a producer is also a finisher, right? So if you come in, I call them starters and finishers. And like when it comes to writing music and trying to find the great art, is that a lot of people are good starters, meaning they have like at least artists, they have these crazy ideas. You know, I know people, for example, that can just sit down and literally write you a song on the spot in like 5 minutes and it'll be incredible. And they can just do this all day long. The problem is when you've got 100 songs that are really good, you're looking for the one that's not good, but like great, life-changing, inspirational, like game-changing, right? And that is what a finisher does. They take all of that information and they sit down and they process it and they say, you know what, you've got a lot of great ideas, but this one's special and this one's special and this one's special. Let's roll and finish those ideas and make something out of it. So that's what a great producer does. And this is why Rick Rubin is one of the greatest producers of all time, because he's been able to find so many moments and take artists and just always elevate them up. Now, one thing I will say, every producer has their detractors. I can't think of a producer that I know of or have worked with that has like not, you know, I haven't met a band where I'm like, oh, blah, 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 blah. This is what's wrong with that session, right? Okay. You're not going to be professionally, because this is a service industry, you're not going to be the right fit for every single band ever, period. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, I have bands I mix for all the time where it's just like, hey, you know what? I'm not the right person to mix this song. And then I have bands where I'm the perfect person to mix this song. You know what I mean? So it's just like, same thing with a producer, like Rick's approach. It's not like a cookie cutter stamp. You know what I mean? He's going to be perfect for some artists and completely the wrong fit for other artists. And, you know, that's part of being a creative. Different people have different personalities. They have different styles of communicating. They have different ways of doing things. And, you know, when you have two things that complement each other, boom, it's better than any of them individually could have done. And when you have two things that don't work together at all, sometimes that can create greatness, or sometimes it can go completely the opposite direction. So you can't like fault somebody because somebody had a bad experience or said, oh, this person didn't really add so much or whatever. Because, you know, honestly, it's like, you're not going to be the right fit. So for me, what's not important is a single interaction that a person has, but it's zooming out and looking at the sum total of the whole. And if you look at what Rick Rubin's done in his career, bravo. I mean, just bravo. Home run, slam dunk, one of the best of the best. So, you know, let the haters hate. Go put up some credits and then come talk some trash, because he'll be waiting for you to get on his level for a very, very long time if you're even lucky enough or talented enough to do so. So all that being said, let me know in the comments below what you think about this interview, what your opinion is on this matter. I'm very curious to hear about it. And of course, anything else you want me to react to. If you enjoy this content, please click like and subscribe and push the little notification bell button so you can check out some of the other stuff and some of the other mix breakdowns and stuff like that I do. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Joel Wanasek. Also, check out nailthemix.com. Thank you so much for watching.